Welcome to the step-by-step guide for the DJI Mini 3 Pro. This in-depth guide is going to teach you absolutely everything you need to know. It doesn't matter if you're just considering buying this drone, are an absolute beginner, or you have some drone experience, there is something in this guide for everybody. In this in-depth guide, we will go over everything from the drone itself, the controllers, the DJI Fly App, flight modes, and new modes such as vertical video, your first flight, and more. This is going to be intensive, but by the end of this video, you will know everything you need to know to go out and get the most from this drone. Let's jump right in. Before we get into it, I just want to quickly go through each section of this guide so that you know what to expect. First, we'll take a look at the drone and talk about everything on it, what it is and what it does. Then we'll take a look at the controllers available for the Mini 3 Pro, the differences between the RC-N1 controller and the new DJI RC controller, and what each button does on the controller. Then we'll jump into the app and I'll explain the interface, what all the icons and buttons do. We'll also take a look at the flight modes, the settings menu, and the camera settings. Then we will head out for our first flight and discuss what you should do the first time you go flying. And lastly, we'll take a look at a few cinematic drone moves and how to do them so that you can get awesome footage straight away. Now let's start by going over the drone, taking a look at what everything is and what everything does. Now when you first unbox your DJI Mini 3 Pro, this is how it's going to look. And the very first thing you want to do is go over the entire drone and remove all the protective stickers. Now to unfold the arms that the propellers sit on, for the top ones you simply want to pull them backwards, and then for the bottom ones you simply want to rotate them round like this. Now the nice thing about these arms over some other drones is that they don't catch on each other, so you can unfold them in any order and they won't overlap. Then you want to remove the gimbal protector. So to do this, there's a tab on the bottom. You simply want to pull this down and then you can remove your gimbal protector. And this is very important to put on whenever you're transporting the drone because this protects the gimbal and the camera. Now talking about the gimbal, this is an all new gimbal design for the DJI Mini 3 Pro. It has 3-axis stabilization and it has a couple of nice new features. The standout feature is that the gimbal can now rotate the camera round to shoot vertical video. You'll also notice a cutout above the camera, and this cutout allows the camera to tilt even higher up than before and allows you to get a range of creative shots that you normally would not be able to get because you would maybe have the propellers in the shot. Well, now you don't because of this notch. Then above the camera, you'll see these two sensors. Now these are obstacle avoiding sensors. Now the two sensors on the front also look backwards down the body of the drone, and you'll also notice two sensors on the bottom of the drone. Now these are used for the APAS 4.0 Advanced Pilot Assistance Systems, and what this allows you to do if you turn it on in the settings, the drone can try and navigate around obstacles itself, or it can brake whenever it senses an obstacle, and this just makes the drone much safer to fly. Looking at the ends of the two arms of the drones, you will see these two LEDs, and these will be illuminated when the drone is turned on. Now when it comes to putting the battery in and out, you'll see two tabs on either side of the battery. You simply want to press them in and then give the battery a pull. This removes the battery from the drone, and it's the opposite whenever you put the battery back in. You simply push the battery in and press it until you hear a click. Now looking at the bottom of the drone, you'll see two vents, and these vents allow cooling into the drone. Next to the vents, you'll see these two skids, and these two skids are to keep the bottom of the drone off the ground whenever you set it down. Looking at the back of the drone now, you'll see a USB-C port. Now this USB-C port has two uses. Firstly, if you want to remove videos or photos from the internal storage of the drone, you can connect this USB-C to your computer or device you're copying them files to and copy them files over. Or if you have a battery in the drone, you can connect this USB-C to a power source and this will charge the battery in the drone. Next to that, you have a memory card slot, and this is where you're going to put your micro SD card to store your video and photos to. Now looking at the propellers of the drone, these propellers are larger than over the Mini 2, and this gives you more performance with this drone, and I've also noticed that the drone is actually quieter in the air. Much like the Mini 2, these propellers attach using a screwdriver, so unlike something like the Mavic 3 where the propellers press in and you twist them to attach them, on this they actually attach with little screws, and so you use the tiny screwdriver provided to attach these propellers to the drone. Now taking a look at the top of the drone, you'll see 2 more vents for cooling, again helping keep the drone cool. And then you'll see this button here under the DJI logo. Now if you press this button once, it will tell you how much charge is in the battery inserted in the drone. And then if you press it once and then give it a long press, the drone will actually turn on. The propellers will start to move. After a few seconds you'll hear a sound, and this will be a signal that the drone is now turned on. To turn the drone off, it's the opposite, so a short press followed by a long press, you'll see the lights go out, it'll flash for a few seconds, and then the drone will turn off. Now when it comes to the controllers for the DJI Mini 3 Pro, you have 2 options. You have the DJI RC-N1 controller, and you have the new DJI RC controller. So before I go into the controller, what all the buttons do and what everything does, I just want to quickly point out the differences between these 2 controllers. So firstly, starting with the joysticks. On the new RC controller, the joysticks are located in the back of the controller, whereas in the RC-N1, they're located in the bottom. The buttons on the front of these controllers are very similar, except the RC-N1 has an additional button on the top right and top left of the controller, and I'll get into what they do later in this video. If you're using the RC-N1, you want to attach your phone. You do this by pulling the clip at the top upwards. You then unattach the cable. You simply attach your phone in and put the cable into the side of your phone. Looking at the top of the controllers, you'll see there are a few differences. On the RC-N1 controller, you only have 1 scroll wheel, and this is used to move the gimbal up and down. You also only have 1 button. In video mode, this will start or stop recording, or in photo mode, this will take a photo. By contrast, on the new RC controller, you have 2 gimbal wheels. One is used for moving the gimbal up and down, and the other is used for zooming in and out. And you also see you have individual buttons for taking videos and taking photos. Now the nice thing about these buttons is if you're in video mode and you press the photo button, the drone will switch into photo mode. And if you're in photo mode and you press the video record button, the drone will switch into video mode, and this allows you to switch modes very quickly. Lastly, looking on the back of the controllers, you'll see the RC-N1 has no buttons on the back, whereas the RC controller has 2 buttons on the back, and you can change what these do, and I'll show you how to in the DJI Fly App settings. So this controller just gives you more control at your fingertips to allow you to do things quicker without having to go into the app, with the addition of having a fantastic screen built in. So now let's quickly go through this controller and talk about what all the buttons do. So the first thing you're going to want to do is attach the joysticks to this controller. Now as mentioned on this controller, they're in the back, so you simply want to remove them and then screw them onto the pegs. So let's talk about the buttons on this controller. The first button you'll notice is the return to home or emergency brake button. So a quick short press of this button will bring the drone to an emergency stop. The drone will stop in place and hover where it's at. Or if you press and hold it and give it a long press, the drone will return to home. So the drone will automatically rise up in the air, fly back to where it took off from, and land itself without you making any inputs on the controller. Now, this return to home will also kick in if you lose transmission signal. So this is a great feature to have in the drone, as it means the drone will come back to you safely. Then in the middle of the controller, you have this slider, and this will change the drone between cine mode, normal mode, and sport mode. To keep it short, cine mode is the slowest mode, where the inputs in the sticks result in the slowest movements of the drone, and this is great for getting slow cinematic shots. Sport mode is the fastest mode, so when it's in this mode, you will get the most performance from your drone and will be able to cover large distances quickly. And then normal is the middle ground between the two, so it's not the fastest mode, but it's also not the slowest mode. Then next to that, you have the power button. Now, one single press of this button will show you on the lights how much power is in your controller, and then to turn it on, it's the same as the drone. It's a single press followed by a long press. You'll hear a beep, the screen will come on, and this will be your controller turned on. To turn it off again, it's the reverse, so a single press followed by a long press, you'll hear a beep, the screen will turn off, and that is the drone turned off. Now in the bottom of the controller, you'll see a few things. Firstly, you have a USB-C connector, and you're going to use this to connect it to a power source to charge your controller. Now in the bottom of the controller, you'll see a flap, and if you lift this flap up, you'll see an area for a memory card. Now the reason you can put a memory card in this controller is you can do things like screen recording on this controller, where it will record whatever's happening on the screen and store it to that memory card. You can then take that memory card out and import them screen recordings into something like your computer. Now looking at the top of the controller, you'll see 2 buttons. The first button, the one with the camera on it, a single press of this will take a photo of your drone, And then the second button with the small red circle on it is the record, the video record button. Pressing this will start a video recording and also stop a video recording. Then you have two scroll wheels. The first scroll wheel will rotate the gimbal upwards and downwards, and the second will zoom the camera in and out. Then looking at the back of the controller, we have two buttons, C1 and C2. Now these buttons can be programmed using the DJI Fly app to do different things, such as bringing up the map full screen, recentering the gimbal, and more. You can program these in the DJI Fly app, and I'll show you how to do that later in this video. You'll also notice in the back of the controller some vents, so that's everything for the new RC controller. When looking at the RC N1 controller, there's only two other buttons I want to cover. The first is this button here, and it's the function button. Now this acts very much like the buttons on the back of the new RC controller. This function button can be programmed in the DJI Fly app to do different things, and you can program it for a single press and a double press. So for example, a double press can recenter the gimbal. On the other side, you have this picture of a camera, and this actually changes the video or photo mode of the drone. So if you're in photo mode and you press this, the drone will go into video mode, and if you press it again, it will go back into photo mode. So that's everything you need to know about the controllers. Let's now take a look at the Fly app itself. Let's now take a look at the DJI Fly app and what everything within the app does. Now the first time you turn on your controller, you want to go through the controller setup, and the next thing I recommend doing is connecting to the Wi-Fi. Now if you didn't connect to the Wi-Fi during the initial setup, you can do that by dragging down on the top right of the screen, and then you want to press the settings button on the top right of that menu. Within that menu, you can go to network and internet, and then you can connect your Wi-Fi. Now the reason you want to connect your Wi-Fi is because the first time you turn on your drone, you will have firmware and controller updates to do, and you want to do these updates to make sure you get all the latest features off your drone. Now the next thing you're going to want to do is, if you got DJI Care Refresh, then you want to go through the process of binding your controller so that you get the flyaway coverage. You will get a prompt on this screen to do that, and just follow the instructions. It only takes a few seconds. Now when you're ready to go fly, just press the Go Fly button on the bottom right of the controller. Now, there's a lot of icons on this screen, so I'm just going to go through them in order and tell you what everything does. Now looking at the top left of the screen where it says N mode, this is the flight mode you're currently in, and this mimics what you have it set to on the controller. So N for normal mode, I can change this to S for sport mode, which is the fastest, or if I change it to cine mode, which is the slowest to get the most cinematic shots, you will see it changes to C mode. Next to that, where it says altitude zone 120, this is where you're going to get a lot of messages about if your drone's ready to fly, and when it is ready to fly, the zone you're in. So if you don't have a GPS log yet, you maybe need to calibrate your drone, or you're in an area that you need authorization to take off from, this is where you're going to see them messages to let you know. Now, if you tap into this menu, you'll see a further expansion on the message that it's giving you. In this case, it's saying aircraft not in flight, vision system and obstacle sensing unavailable. That's because the drone has not taken off yet. Now, below that, you'll see the return to home altitude. Whenever you engage to return to home, the drone is going to fly up to a set altitude, fly back to you, and then land. So you're going to want to set this return to home altitude higher than the tallest obstacles or buildings in your area, so that when the drone kicks into return to home, it flies above them when it comes back to you. And you can change this simply by sliding this slider. For flight protection, you can set the max altitude, which is how high you can fly your drone before it will stop you flying any higher. And you can also change the max distance, so that if you set it to 100 meters, you won't be able to fly your drone further than that distance away from you. Below that, you'll see some information on your SD card. You'll see if you have an SD card inserted, how much memory is left available on that SD card. Or in this case, you can see that I'm using internal storage and how much space of that internal storage is left available. Next to that, you'll see this 90 in a green circle. Now this is your battery percentage indicator. And if I press into that, you will get further expansion on this indicator. You'll see how long is left in minutes and seconds until the drone is going to return home to you because the battery is low, how long until it will try a forced landing, and how long until the battery is depleted completely. Now if you press in and look at this and everything is showing zeros, that's because you haven't taken off yet. This information will only become available when you take off. Next to that, we have the RC signal strength. And again, if you press into it, it will tell you how strong that signal is. In this case, it's strong. Next to that, you'll get your vision sensor indicators. And then next to that, you'll get your GPS indicators. Now, if you press into this, you'll see how strong of a GPS signal you have and how many satellites you are connected to. Now, this will change depending on how strong a lock you have on them satellites. And when it's white, you are good to go. Now, the three dots you'll see next to that is the settings menu. And I'll be coming back to that and going into detail about the settings later in this video. Now, at the bottom left, you will see this map. You can make the map smaller by pressing the little icon on the bottom left of the map, and that will make the map smaller. Or if you press it, it will get bigger. And if you press it again, it will take up the entire screen. Now, this map is going to show you several things. It's going to show you where you are in relation to your drone, where the home point is, which is where your drone's taken off from or where you set the home point to, and it's going to show you the flight path off the drone, and a line showing the quickest way to bring the drone back to you. Next to that, we have a few flight parameters. You'll see the height of the drone, you'll see the speed of the drone, you'll see the distance the drone is away from you, and those all will show next to the map. In this case, again, they're shown as 0 because the drone hasn't taken off yet. Next to that, you'll see a storage indicator, which is how much storage is available on your internal storage or memory card. And if you press this, you'll get a further breakdown of this. Next to that, you'll see a resolution and FPS indicator. And I can press into this and change it. So if you're in video mode, you can change your resolution. You can change it from 4K to 2.7 to 1080p. And you can change your FPS. You can change it to 25, 48, 50, or in this DJI Mini 3 Pro, even 60 FPS. Now, if your camera is in auto mode, you will not be able to change things like the shutter speed and the ISO. The drone will do this for you to make sure you have a perfectly exposed image at all times. Now, if you want a slightly brighter image or a slightly darker image in auto mode, you can do that by changing this EV setting. If you press into it and you increase the value, you will see that the drone will automatically adjust the camera settings to have a brighter image. And if you decrease this value below 0, you will see that the drone will automatically change the settings to have a darker image. So although you don't have control over the ISO and shutter speed, you can control how bright or dark of an image you want. Now, something the automatic mode will do is that it will change the ISO, shutter speed and white balance even while you're recording. So to stop this and to stop temperature changes during your video or brightness changes during your video, you want to lock the exposure before you start recording. To do this, you can either press and hold on the screen for a few seconds and you'll see a padlock icon appear to indicate that your exposure has now been locked. Or if you have it set, you can use the back right button on the controller, you can press that and again you'll see that padlock icon to indicate that your exposure has been locked. Now, if you do want control, manual control or pro control over further camera settings, then simply press the auto button here. And now you will see the camera settings have expanded in the bottom right corner. So now you will see again that you're in 4K 30 FPS, how much memory is left in the card. You'll see that you're in normal color profile and you'll see the color temperature of the image. Now, if I press into this, you'll see further options. Firstly, you can decide if you want the white balance to be auto, or if you press auto, you can change the white balance to be manual. Again, below that, you can change your resolution and FPS. You get another storage indicator of your card, but then you have your color profiles. So you can either have normal color profile or Cine-like color profile, which is a flatter color profile, which gives you more dynamic range, but will require you color grading in post. You can also change your coding format. You can have H.264 or H.265. You can also change the file format from MP4 to MOV. Now, if you want to adjust your ISO and shutter speed, you can either from that menu press the camera icon on the bottom right, or you can tap the camera settings on the bottom right of the app, and this will bring up the same menu. From here, you can adjust your ISO, so you can increase your ISO to make the image brighter or lower it to make the image darker. You can change your shutter speed, so you can decrease your shutter speed or you can increase your shutter speed. And below that, you'll see a metering number. And if I close this menu, you'll also see that metering number in the bottom right of the app screen. Now this is going to tell you how well the app thinks you have exposed your image, and it's going to do this by telling you how much under 0 or how much above 0 you are. So if you're over 0, it's telling you you've overexposed the image, and if you're below 0, it's telling you you've underexposed the image. So you want to adjust these settings until you get that metering to be as close to 0 as possible. Now this is not a perfect indicator of how well your image is exposed, but it's a pretty good start if you're just starting out for the first time. Another way you can check exposure is by using your histogram, and you'll see this over to the left of my DJI Fly app. I'll show you how to turn this on in settings in a few seconds, but you can use your histogram to try and make sure that as much of the image is in the center of that histogram as possible. And that's another good way to make sure you've exposed your image correctly. Now looking over to the right of the screen, the first and most exciting new feature of this DJI Mini 3 Pro is the fact that you can do vertical video or vertical photos. And you can change that by pressing this icon here, and you'll see the camera rotates to vertical mode. If you want to change back to normal video mode, you can press the icon again and the camera will rotate back to its horizontal position. Below that, you'll see the zoom indicator, and you can tap this to go to 2x zoom. You can tap it again to go back to 1x zoom. Or if you press and hold on it, you can actually have finer control over the zoom and zoom anywhere between 1 to 2 times. You can also do this using the scroll wheel on the back right of the controller, and by turning this, you can adjust the zoom. Below that, you'll see focusing. AF stands for autofocus, or you can press that and do manual focus. And again, if you press and hold, you can have fine control over the focusing of the camera. Now the picture of the hills is infinity focus, and the picture of the flower is close focus, and you can have fine control of anywhere in between. If you're a beginner, I highly recommend you just leave it in autofocus. So next to that, you're going to see the flight modes icon, and if you press this, you'll see that we are currently in video mode. Now below normal video mode, you'll see slow motion, and if you press this, you can do 120 FPS 1080p slow motion using this drone. Now just above video mode, you're going to see photo mode, and there's a few options in here. You can either take a single shot, you can take a 48 megapixel photo, you can also do AEB, which is auto exposure bracketing, and this is going to take 3 photos. One underexposed photo, one normally exposed photo, and one overexposed photo, which you can then put together in your photo editing software like Lightroom to get a high dynamic range photo. You can also take burst photos, and you can do a timed shot, and you can decide how long before it takes a photo using the menu to the left. In this case, it's 10 seconds. Now when you're in video mode, if you want to use any of the focus track settings, you must first take off, and then you simply want to drag a box over the subject that you want to focus track. Now within focus track, you're going to have a few options. You can do active track, and in this you can either do trace, so the drone will fly behind you. You can do parallel, the drone will fly beside you or parallel to you. You can also do spotlight, which is where the drone will stay stationary in the air, but it will rotate and the camera will gimbal up and down to keep you in frame at all times. The last one you can do is point of interest, where you select the direction and the drone will orbit around your subject. Going back to the flight modes, you have master shots. Now when you're in master shots, you can draw a box over a subject, and when you hit go, the drone will go off and do a range of pre-planned maneuvers such as droning, such as orbit, and then it will automatically come back to you within a few minutes, and you will have a sequence of your subject ready to go. Now when you draw a box over your subject, it will tell you how long the master shot is going to take, and you'll have a few controls to tweak the outcome of the master shots you would like. You also have quick shots mode. Now in quick shots mode, you will have a range of quick shots that you can choose from, and these are individual drone moves the drone will do automatically and then come back to you, and you will have a nice little clip that you can use in your sequences. Next we have hyperlapse. Now hyperlapse is going to take photos at intervals and then put them together to give you a sped up video or a hyperlapse. And within hyperlapse we have a few options. We have free, we have circle, which is where the drone will circle around a subject to create a hyperlapse. We have course lock, which is where the drone will fly towards a heading while doing the hyperlapse, so that in your hyperlapse the drone is actually flying forward. and we have waypoints, so you can set waypoints for your hyperlapses. We then have pano or panoramic images, and this will allow you to take panoramic photos with your drone. Now below the flight modes button you'll have this big red indicator, and this button will allow you to start or stop recording. You can also do this using the buttons on the back of the controller. If you're in video mode, then this button with the red circle will start the recording and stop it, and if you're in photo mode, then this picture of the camera will take a photo. Below that is our media library, so if I press this button here, you will see that the drone will take us into our media library, where you can see all the photos and videos that you have taken with your drone. Now when it comes to taking the drone off, you have a few options. You can automatically take off and land the drone by pressing this button here, and then holding the takeoff button, and the drone will automatically take off into the air. To land it, it's the same button again, press and hold land, and the drone will automatically land. Or you can manually take off and land the drone. To do this, you want to press the sticks downward and inward until the propellers start, and then you want to press up on the left stick until the drone hovers up into the air. To land it, simply hold down on the left stick, and after a few seconds, the drone will automatically land. Now let's take a look at the settings menu by pressing the three dots on the top right of this app. So in safety mode, you're going to see one of the new exciting features of the DJI Mini 3 Pro, and that is APAS 4.0 obstacle avoidance. So under flight assistance, we can change how we want this to work. If it's in brake, whenever it sees an obstacle in front of it, the drone will simply brake and hover in the air. It will not allow you to fly into it. But we can actually change this to bypass. And in bypass mode, the drone will try to automatically fly around or through obstacles that it sees. Or if you want to get really close to an obstacle, please be careful if you're going to do this, but you can turn off the obstacle avoidance. The radar map, which is shown in the bottom middle of the app whenever you're in flight and will show obstacles, can also be turned on or off. Now under flight protection, you'll see the max altitude, which is again the max altitude the drone can fly before it will stop you, and also the max distance, which is the distance the drone will be able to fly before it will stop itself. In this case, it's set to no limit. You can also change the auto return to home altitude. Again, this is the altitude the drone will hover up to before it returns home to you. Again, you want this to be higher than the highest buildings or obstacles around you. You can also update the home point. Now this is really useful if you're moving around when flying the drone. If you take the drone off and the home point is set and you walk up a beach, for example, if you use return to home, the drone will fly all the way back to where you were originally standing. So if you're moving around a lot, you want to go in here and update the home point often so that the drone will come back to where you're standing now. Below that, you'll see an option to calibrate your compass and IMU, which you want to do if you get a message to do so. Below that, you'll see battery info, and if you press into this, you'll see detailed information about the battery of the drone. Then below that, you'll see unlock geozone, and you will need to use this if you're flying in an area which requires an unlock. There's also a find my drone option, and what this will do is it will show you on a map where your drone currently is in relation to you. Under that, you'll see advanced safety settings, and within this, you'll see a few options. Firstly, you can decide what will happen if you lose signal. You can have it return to home, return to you. You can have it just descend and land where it's at, or you can have it hover in place. And you can also change when you should be able to do the emergency propeller stop. Now under the control menu, you can change the units that you will see within your app. I use metric, but you can also use imperial. And then you can change things like the gimbal mode. Now in follow mode, the drone will keep the horizon level at all times. So if it's banking left or right, the horizon will always be level. In FPV mode, it tries to simulate what you would see from an FPV drone. So as you bank the drone left and right, the gimbal will actually rotate left and right too, to give you this more of a fixed wing feel. Again, under that you have advanced gimbal settings. You can change things like the pitch speed, which is how fast the pitch happens. And you can change things like the pitch smoothness, which is how much it buffers out the movement after you let go of the sticks to come to a smoother stop. And you can change these settings for yaw as well, and you can have specific settings for normal mode, sport mode, and cine mode. Now if at any time you want to reset these settings, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can just press reset. Below that, you'll see gimbal calibration, and by pressing this, you can calibrate your gimbal, which is something you want to do if you think the horizon isn't level, for example. You can also recenter the gimbal by pressing the recenter gimbal button here. And then we have stick mode. So if you press into this, it will default to mode 2, but you can have different stick modes, which is where the sticks of the controller will have different movements of the drone. So in mode 1, if I press up on the left stick, you can see the drone will fly forward. But in mode 2, if I press up on the left stick, you will see it will ascend. And you can also customize this by going to the custom menu. I use stick mode 2. Under button customization, you can change what the buttons on the back of the controller do. So for C1, I have it to recenter gimbal. So if I press it, the gimbal will recenter to the horizon or recenter straight down. And for C2, I have it set to auto exposure lock or unlock, so that if I'm in auto mode and I'm recording a video, the white balance and exposure won't change during the video. Then you have advanced mode, which is where you can have much finer control on the movement of the drone in relation to the sticks of the controller. As a beginner, I highly recommend you don't change these. And below that, you have a flight tutorial, and you can repair your controller to the aircraft. Under camera, you can change your video format. You can see what color mode you're in, normal or decine-like. You can change your coding format from H.264 to H.265, and you can turn on video subtitles. Now, video subtitles are a recording of the inputs to the drone parameters, and it will save this in real time during the flight to the subtitles of the video. Then when you're in your video player watching the video back, if you turn on subtitles, you can see these metrics overlaid over the video. Now, the only other thing to be aware of with the camera settings is, if you change into photo mode and go back into the camera settings, you'll see a new option to allow you to change the size of the photo. And also, if you click out of settings when in photo mode, by clicking the format on the bottom right of the app screen, you'll be able to change the format the photo gets saved in from JPEG to JPEG and RAW. Now, I mentioned earlier that using a histogram is a really good way to expose your image properly, and you could turn on histogram using this option here. Peaking level will allow you to focus your image properly. So if I turn on peaking level to high, and I change the focus mode to manual, you can see that everything that is in focus has a red outline. And so you can use this to get a visual representation of what objects within your image are in focus. Now, overexposure warning will overlay zebras in areas of the screen which have no information because they are overexposed. And this is another really good indicator, a visual indicator you can use on the screen to see what parts of your image, like your sky, are overexposed and to bring the exposure back. Next, we have grid lines, and if we turn these on, this will overlay grid lines over your image, and you can use this to help with your composition when you're recording videos or photos. Below that, we have a white balance indicator again. You can have this in auto or manual. Then we have some more storage indication again. Again, I'm using internal storage. And you can turn on cache when recording below this. And what it will do is it will cache lower quality previews of your videos and photos to the controller. You want to make sure that you have a SD card in the controller for this feature. And then below that, you can decide how much of the memory within your memory card you want to be dedicated to this caching. Below that, you can reset your camera features. Now, the transmission menu is not one that I am regularly in or regularly make any changes to. But if we take a quick look, you can change your frequency from dual band to 2.4 or 5.8 GHz. I just leave channel mode in auto, and below that you can see the frequencies that your controller is using. Lastly, you have the about menu. So within this, you'll obviously see your drone and your drone model. But the important bits here are, within aircraft firmware, you can hit check for updates, and if there is an update, update your drone if it hasn't automatically prompted you to do so. You can see the controller firmware you're on, and you can update your FlySafe database. Below that, you can see your app version, you can see your battery serial number, your flight controller, your remote controller serial number, and your camera serial number. Now, the last thing I want to show you is how you can find out if you're in a restricted area when you're flying. So to do this, you want to go back to the home screen, and you want to press the Fly Spots button. Now, if you press the I button to the right, you can turn on what type of zones you want to see. So by default, you'll have restricted, authorization, altitude, and enhanced warning zones turned on, but you can also turn on warning zones, recommended zones is on, and you can also see densely populated areas. Now, from this, you can see all the warning zones and authorization zones around the airport. So if I press the red, for example, you can see this is a restricted zone where flying a drone is prohibited. Whereas if you press the blue one, you can see this is an authorization zone, and this means you need authorization to be able to fly your drone this close to the airport. So this is a really good way to see areas that you can and can't fly. If I zoom in on the coastline, for example, you can see there is no warning or authorization zones around here. and so you are good to fly. So that is everything you need to know about the DJI Fly app. Let's now go and do our first flight. Okay, we're now ready for our first flight, and there's a few things I recommend doing. The first thing you want to do is to turn on your drone and your controller, and I also recommend you turn on a personal Wi-Fi hotspot on your mobile phone and connect your controller to it, and that way you'll have maps available via the internet. Now when it comes to a location for flying, as everyone else on the internet recommends, I recommend coming to a large open area free of any obstacles such as a football pitch, or my personal favourite, the beach. Now you have no reason to be afraid of bringing your drone for the first time to an area with water. You can fly it out over the water and you can be assured you're going to have no issues, and out over the water there's going to be no obstacles. Another benefit of being near the beach is there's probably not going to be as many people as if you were in a football pitch, for example, and that's going to let you learn the controls, learn how to fly the drone without the anxiety of having someone watching you do it. If you are a little bit nervous about flying over the water, just keep it over the beach and you will be absolutely fine. So, how do we get the drone in the air? Well, there's two ways to do this. The first way is using auto takeoff, and then I'm going to show you auto landing. So to do that, simply press the auto takeoff button on the left and press and hold the takeoff button. And after a few seconds, the drone will automatically take off up into the air. Now, if you want to auto land the drone, simply press the same button and hold the button to land. And after a few seconds, the drone will automatically land in front of you. It really is as simple as that. Now, if you want to take the drone off manually, you can do that by pressing the two sticks downwards and inwards. That will start the propellers. Nothing will happen, the propellers will just spin. And then to take it off, press up on the left stick and the drone will rise up into the air. To land the drone manually, simply pull down on the left stick, the drone will hover for a few seconds, and then it will automatically land. Now, when it comes to your first flight, you have a choice of 3 flight modes: Cine, Normal and Sport. To begin with, it's my personal recommendation that you keep the drone in Cine mode. This is the slowest mode that results in the slowest movements for the inputs you make on the joysticks and will be the safest way for you to fly. Now, one of the first things I really recommend you do the first time you fly your drone is take it off into the air and fly it a little bit away from you, but not that far away that you will not be able to see it. So I've simply flown it behind the camera now and I can still see the drone there. And I want you to press and hold the return to home button. Press and hold it for a few seconds and you will see the return to home kick in. Keep an eye on the drone and watch as the drone starts to fly back towards you. So the drone again is behind the camera now. It's now coming back towards me. It's now above me. And what's going to happen is the drone is going to stop above me and it is going to lower itself and land right in front of me where it took off. So it's just turning to face the way it was when it took off. Here it comes now. And the drone has now come down automatically to land next to me. It's going to take a few seconds and then it's just going to land on the ground next to me. As simple as that. I had no input on the controller here whatsoever. Now, that might seem like a very strange thing to do the first time you go flying, but here's why I think this is a great thing to do. It's one of the first things you do whenever you go flying. The connection on the DJI Mini 3 Pro and many other DJI drones is absolutely fantastic. But there is going to be a point, at some point in the future, whenever you're out flying, where you fly the drone behind an obstacle such as a tree, and you're going to get some connection issues. The screen might freeze, the screen might go black, and as a beginner, this is an incredibly unnerving experience. But really all that happens is, if you lose connection to the drone will automatically go into return to home mode, it will fly up and it will start to come back towards you, where two things can happen. One, you can take control of the drone whenever you get transmission, whenever it comes close to you again, or it will just come back as it did there and land in front of you. But like I said, the first time that happens and you lose connection issues, it is so stressful. You know what the drone's supposed to do, but you've never seen it happen before, so it's incredibly unnerving. Well, by doing that, by watching return to home work the first time you fly the drone, then you'll be incredibly confident if you ever do have connection issues whenever you're out flying, that the drone will be able to come back to you. So what do we do now? Well, there's 2 more things I personally recommend you do. The first is to take the drone off again, fly up into the air, and then what I want you to do is to make simple and single inputs on the joysticks off the controller. So push up in the left stick, and watch the drone rise up. Push forward in the right stick, watch the drone fly forward. Pull back in the right stick, watch the drone fly back. Pull down on the left stick, for example, and watch the drone lower down. And by making these simple and single inputs, you will very quickly learn what the inputs do whenever you make them on the joysticks in relation to the drone movement. Then what I recommend you do is you put the drone up and you start to do cinematic moves. Now if you're at a football pitch, you might say, well, what's the point of doing cinematic moves? I'm at a football pitch. Well, learning these cinematic moves now will mean whenever you do go out to a location where you do want to get cinematic moves off a really cool looking location, that you're able to do them because you've practiced them before. So put the drone up, do things like an orbit, do things like a really smooth cinematic slider, and build up the muscle memory on the sticks. And then once you're confident and ready, you can flick it out of cine mode, put it into normal mode and sport mode, and try the faster modes off the drone. And those are the things I recommend you do on your first flight off the drone. Go out there and have fun with this amazing little drone. Now let's really quickly take a look at 5 drone moves that you can use on the DJI Mini 3 Pro to get epic results. I've been using these moves all the time recently, and they always result in amazing looking footage with this drone. I'm going to show you the drone move, what it looks like, and then the inputs you need to make on the controller to pull it off. Let's start with the classic orbit. This move looks really cinematic and is really easy to achieve. Firstly, align your point of interest in the center of the screen, and then start the drone moving horizontally by moving the right stick either left or right. Then on the left stick, you want to move it in the opposite direction to start the orbit. Another variation of this move is the lazy orbit. This move is very similar to the orbit, except the idea is that your subject starts off center and then slowly works its way into the middle of the frame. To do this move, align your drone slightly to the right or left of your subject, then using the right stick, start to fly horizontally towards the point of interest by moving it either left or right, and at the same time move the left stick in the opposite direction again. But this time, the left stick should only have a tiny amount of input. The rise up, starting low down and slowly rising up, can result in an awesome looking shot. All you have to do is align your subject in frame, and with your drone in cine mode, which is the slowest, press up on the left stick. Your drone will slowly rise up and reveal the background of your point of interest. Top down slider. Point your gimbal straight down and slowly start your drone flying horizontally by pushing the right stick either left or right. And I recommend using grid lines to help keep your subject straight. Normal mode works best for this, as because the drone is usually so high, cine mode doesn't give a big enough sense of motion. Lastly, we have the push forward low. The movement for this shot is very simple. You fly the drone forward by pressing up on the right stick. The key though is getting nice and low to the ground. And now with the new DJI Mini 3 Pro's obstacle avoiding sensors, you can do this safely and easily and get these very dynamic push forward shots that are low to the ground. So hopefully now you're armed with the knowledge you need to go out and get epic photos and videos with this fantastic little drone. What do you think is the best new feature of the DJI Mini 3 Pro? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you've liked this video and you've learned something new, please let me know by giving me the thumbs up and clicking that like button down below. Now, if you've just picked up this drone and you want to know how to get more cinematic videos and take better photos, then I have a ton of other content on my channel to help you level up your drone game that I recommend checking out. And if you want to stick around and see a few more of them videos now, then here's a few I personally recommend checking out. I'll not keep you back any further. I hope you have lots of fun with this fantastic little drone, and I'll catch you over there.